Vivian is a medicinal person, auctioned off like a commodity while being locked in a cage. 2 years ago, she was a carefree and happy girl, but when she returned home, she found her mother had been killed. The mysterious men wearing masks were from a medical research institute, and they believed Vivian's body was perfect for becoming a medicinal person. The leader took her away, and her father was also brutally killed. After countless experiments, Vivian's blood became special. It could cure all diseases. Billionaire Michael Smith was present at the auction. Born with a deadly genetic disease, he had less than a year to live unless a cure could be found. The bidders began raising their offers, and the price reached $1.5 million. Michael's assistant loudly declared, "The Smith family offers $15 million." Michael successfully purchased Vivian. He crouched down, gestured for Vivian to approach, and then held her hand. He quickly used a knife to cut her palm and began drinking her blood. Afterward, Michael felt much better. He told her, "From today on, I am your master. Your name will be Alice." She smiled because in reality, she was only pretending to be naive. She had been searching for a chance to infiltrate the Smith family and investigate the truth behind her parents' deaths. Aunt Olivia was surprised that Michael had returned alive, as she thought he would have died from poisoning by now. She saw him holding a girl, which piqued her curiosity. Alice poked his cheek, and he carried her upstairs. He recalled the medicinal person handbook the auctioneer had given him. Alice's blood hadn't yet reached its full potential, and the more mature her mind became, the better her blood would work. So, Michael needed to help Alice mature mentally. First, he had to teach her how to speak and read. Second, she needed to understand emotions. Third, he would marry her and have children with her. Alice secretly entered the study to search for clues about the research institute and inadvertently found the medicinal person handbook in a cabinet. But before she could open it, Michael entered the study. He quickly found her hiding under the desk and carried her back to her room. He took off his suit jacket and unbuttoned his shirt. Then he began to caress and flirt with her. He was testing her, but she still looked innocent, so he believed she was just a fool. He took Alice to try on new clothes, but she couldn't walk in high heels and nearly twisted her ankle. She tried on many outfits, but Michael remained unsatisfied until she appeared in a white dress, stunning him. He picked her up, sat her on a chair, and personally put high-heeled leather shoes on her. After returning to her room, Alice recalled how the Research Institute had killed her parents and tortured her for 2 years. She swore to make those who had harmed her pay. Michael started teaching Alice how to read. He placed her hand on his throat and taught her to pronounce her name. Then, he taught her how to use the shower head, but accidentally turned on the spray and got drenched. He unbuttoned his shirt to wipe his body, and Alice, feeling shy, covered her eyes. When she was about to eat, he hugged her from behind and said, "Let me teach you how to use a knife and fork." She became impatient with him, but didn't dare to throw a tantrum. After Alice finished her shower, her assistant called to update her on some investigation progress. But Michael suddenly entered the room, and she panicked as her bath towel fell off. He turned red and quickly wrapped her in the towel. Aunt Olivia learned that Alice was bought by Michael to treat his illness, and she decided to stir up trouble because she had always hoped Michael would die soon. So, she intentionally brought Michael's fiancée, Rose, to the house and told her that Alice was a girl Michael had taken in and doted on. Rose became jealous and ordered Alice to leave immediately. Alice didn't respond, and in a fit of rage, Rose pushed her to the ground. To get back at Rose, Alice purposely drew pictures in the snow to catch Michael's attention. He held an umbrella for her, and she tightly embraced him. She almost fainted from the cold, and he quickly carried her inside. Rose saw this and became furious, but Michael's marriage to her was a business arrangement, and he had always disliked Rose. Aunt Olivia sarcastically called Alice an outsider, but Michael retorted, "Aren't you also an outsider? You were adopted, not my real aunt." Michael warned them not to harm Alice, and Alice, in his arms, gave them a provocative look. Rose became even angrier after seeing her expression. Michael wanted to take Alice's temperature, but she was just pretending to be sick, so she refused. To stop him, she suddenly kissed him. Michael grabbed her by the neck and questioned her, as he believed no fool would suddenly kiss a man. The assistant spoke up for her, saying maybe she learned it from TV. Only then did Michael release his grip. At dinner, Alice refused to eat out of spite. Michael sat her on his lap and fed her. His brother, Alan, was puzzled and asked, "Bro, why are you being so nice to her? You don't have feelings for her, do you?" Michael didn't answer, instead telling Alan to take good care of Alice for the next few days because he had to go out. While Alan was teaching Alice to read, Rose found an excuse to lead him away. After Alice drank some milk, she suddenly felt dizzy and soon passed out. It turned out that Rose had asked the maid to put sleeping powder in Alice's milk beforehand, and in return, she promised the maid a reward of $1 million. Alan told Michael that Alice was missing. Michael panicked and ordered the driver to turn the car around and head home, urging them to locate Alice as quickly as possible. When Alice woke up, she found herself covered in bruises and bleeding. Rose grabbed her by the hair and questioned if she was pretending to be a fool. Alice provocatively replied, "No matter how much you hurt me, it's useless, because Michael likes me, not you." Enraged, Rose squeezed Alice's neck, trying to push her off the rooftop. But Michael arrived just in time and pushed Rose to the ground. He wasn't interested in hearing her excuses and picked up the unconscious Alice. He told Rose, "I'm calling off our engagement and sending you to the police station." Back at home, Alice had a nightmare, dreaming that she was being injected with drugs in a lab. She woke up in a panic, and the private doctor, Eric, examined her. Aside from excessive blood loss, there was no serious harm. Before leaving, Eric gave Alice a lingering look. What was his true identity? The next day, Michael came to check on Alice's injuries, only to find that all her wounds had miraculously healed overnight. Michael agreed to take Alice to the party, but only on the condition that she studied diligently today. She was speechless, but he smiled and patted her head. They started playfully bickering, and Alice stepped on Michael's foot. His assistant was stunned because Alice was the first person who had ever dared to step on the CO's foot. In the evening, Michael took Alice to the banquet. While eating cake, she got some on her face. Rose pretended to apologize and offered to take her to the restroom to clean up. However, once they got there, Rose attacked Alice. Alice quickly broke free, but Rose's friend recorded a video, intending to expose Alice for pretending to be a fool. Furious, Alice slapped both of them, then shoved their heads into the sink. Just then, Michael knocked on the restroom door. Alice quickly splashed water on her face and dress. When Michael kicked open the door, he saw Alice drenched and looking aggrieved. He took off his suit jacket and draped it over her. Although Rose tried to explain, Michael only believed Alice. Rose attempted to prove her innocence with the recorded video, only to realize that Alice had already deleted it. Alice pouted and pretended to cry, and Michael held her in his arms to comfort her. After returning home, Alice's assistant called. She had tracked down the whereabouts of a research institute doctor. The next day, the assistant secretly sent Alice a package, which nearly got discovered by Michael. Alice managed to brush it off with her cuteness, but Michael's assistant later found the package hidden in the bushes. While Alice and Michael were playfully wrestling on the sofa, he accidentally pinned her down and kissed her. Embarrassed, she quickly pushed him away and ran off. Meanwhile, Michael's assistant handed him the medicine from the package, but Michael ordered him to keep it a secret. To escape the villa and catch the doctor, Alice drugged Michael's milk. Sitting on his lap, she acted cute and handed him the drink. The moment he finished it, he felt drowsy and soon passed out. Alice changed into casual clothes and went to find the doctor, holding an iron rod as she interrogated him about the mastermind behind the lab. The doctor refused to talk and even tried to destroy the evidence by throwing a USB drive into a glass of wine. Alice knocked him out and placed the USB drive in a designated spot for her assistant to recover. Just then, the headlights of several cars ahead lit up, and she found herself surrounded by thugs hired by Rose. Unfazed, she swiftly took them all down. Turning around, she was about to warn Rose, only to see Michael standing beside her, holding a lighter in his hand. Alice spoke in shock, only realizing afterward that she had exposed herself. It turned out that Michael's assistant had taken the medicine Alice received for testing and discovered it was a sedative. Michael had secretly taken an antidote in advance and only pretended to be drugged. He hoisted Alice onto his shoulder, and as she struggled fiercely, he gave her a light smack on the butt. Back home, he punished her by kissing her deeply for a long time. Then, he warned her never to deceive him again, or the consequences would be severe. Upon learning that Rose had hired thugs to harm Alice, Michael was furious and decided to cut all business ties with Rose's family. He ordered his assistant to contact the Phoenix organization immediately, as only they could find the miracle doctor who could save his life. Since he had developed feelings for Alice, he no longer wanted to rely on drinking her blood for survival and instead sought to locate the doctor as soon as possible. However, what he didn't know was that Alice was actually the leader of the Phoenix organization, and the village where she grew up was the fabled Miracle Doctor Valley. With Rose's family facing bankruptcy, she sought revenge. Michael's aunt Olivia gave her an idea. Rose bribed the kitchen staff in Michael's house and swapped out their ingredients. When combined, these ingredients would cause Michael's body to develop antibodies against Alice's blood, putting his life in grave danger. A few days later, Michael took Alice to a banquet where they were warmly welcomed by the winery owner, Bruce. At the banquet, Alice discovered a pendant from the Miracle Doctor clan. She asked Bruce where it came from, but he refused to answer, making her suspect that he was connected to the laboratory. To curry favor with Michael, Bruce gifted the pendant to Alice. Later, Bruce suggested they stay the night, and Alice agreed, seizing the opportunity to investigate further. That evening, while Michael was soaking in a hot spring, he suddenly fell ill and passed out. Alice immediately bit her finger and used her blood to save him. When he woke up, Alice collapsed in his arms from excessive blood loss. The assistant suggested that Michael have sex with Alice as soon as possible. Now that her intelligence had fully recovered, her blood's effects would reach their peak if they have sex. However, Michael refused because he didn't want to hurt Alice to prolong his own life. At midnight, Alice put on a mask and held a knife to Bruce's throat, demanding he reveal the lab's contact information. Bruce admitted that the lab could be contacted through a specific pendant, but it was currently in someone else's possession. It was only then that Alice realized how important the pendant she received earlier was. She knocked Bruce unconscious, but upon returning to her room, Michael's assistant informed them that Bruce had been killed. After Michael drank the medicine, he coughed up blood again. In order to prolong his life, he decided to force the leader of the Phoenix organization to show up as soon as possible. Before leaving for a business trip, he took Alice to the underground wine cellar in his home and confessed his feelings to her. She was deeply moved and kissed him. They spent a wonderful day in the wine cellar together. Back in her room, Alice's assistant informed her that she had been invited to the hacker conference, and this year's competition had information related to the laboratory. 3 days later, Alice attended the hacker conference disguised with a mask. The host announced that the winner of this year's hacking contest would receive the contact information for the laboratory. The event was organized by Michael, who had already learned that the leader of the Phoenix organization was investigating the laboratory, so he intended to use this as a way to trick the leader. Alice quickly stood out in the competition, and Michael was surprised because he had always thought the leader was male. Alice's enemy, Tom, also recognized her. 6 months ago, due to Alice, Tom had been hunted by an international organization and lost an arm, so he swore revenge on her. Alice won first place in the competition, and when Michael presented her with the award, she was shocked but tried to stay calm. After accepting the award, Tom suddenly shot an arrow at her, and her mask fell off. Michael realized that the leader was Alice. Without hesitation, he shielded her from the arrow. He was furious because he felt that Alice had deceived him. She knew he was looking for the leader, yet she had refused to reveal herself and repeatedly rejected working with him. He threw her over his shoulder and took her back home. He brought her into a secret room and threatened to draw her blood as punishment. Alice was reminded of the dark days she spent in the laboratory. She collapsed emotionally, crying as she pleaded with Michael not to take her blood, then fainted in his arms. Michael felt deeply guilty. At this point, he didn't care about her true identity. He just wanted her to be safe. After Alice woke up, she mistakenly thought that Michael had drawn her blood. She became agitated and wanted to leave his house. He wouldn't let her leave and pushed her onto the bed, kissing her forcefully. She angrily shoved him away and told him she hated him. Her words deeply hurt him. Michael's younger brother, Alan, told Alice that Michael hadn't drawn her blood. In fact, he had taken care of her all night. Since Alice had been unconscious and unable to take her medicine, he had swallowed the medicine himself first and then passed it to her. Alice remembered the happy moments she had shared with Michael and immediately felt guilty. She apologized to him and told him about the massacre of her entire village and the torturous experiences she endured in the lab. She had gone through countless kinds of torture there. Michael's heart broke, and tears streamed down his face as he tightly hugged her. Dr. Eric, who was upstairs, saw this scene and gave a mysterious smile. What secret could he be hiding? Alice's assistant told her that by recovering the data on the USB drive, they had discovered that the lab's funding came from Michael's company. Alice was shocked. She couldn't accept that the gentle Michael, who had treated her so kindly, was a villain. In the middle of the night, she ran away from home. When Michael found out, he was extremely worried and ordered his assistant to find her as soon as possible. Alice received news that the upcoming King of Gamblers Challenge was to be held in a neighboring city, and the famous gambler Kevin, who had close ties to the lab, would also be attending. Alice decided to go and find him. Soon after, Michael's assistant traced her whereabouts and found out she was at a casino. To get close to Kevin, Alice signed up to challenge him. Kevin was full of confidence but ultimately lost to Alice. According to the terms of the bet, he was supposed to have his eyes gouged out. Alice said she would let him go, but only if he provided the contact information for the lab. Kevin admitted that the contact information was in his watch, but someone secretly shot him, killing him. Just as Alice was about to leave, Michael stopped her. He took off her mask and lifted her chin. He carried her back to his home and threw her onto the bed. She pushed him away and asked, "Is your company funding the lab behind the scenes?" But Michael looked puzzled. He checked the evidence she had gathered and was shocked. He told Alice that he would investigate this matter thoroughly, but she didn't believe him and accused him of being the one who killed her parents. Suddenly, Michael's condition worsened, and he vomited blood before collapsing on the floor. Alice's heart softened, and she bit her finger, using her blood to save him. She remembered all the moments she had shared with Michael and realized that she had fallen in love with him. However, she stubbornly refused to admit it and told him, "Actually, from the very beginning, I've only been using you. You're just a tool for me to get revenge." Michael, although hurt, still pleaded with her not to leave, then fainted. His assistant told Alice that Michael hadn't slept for days while trying to find her. She fell asleep in his arms, and when he woke up, he was about to kiss her, but his brother Alan suddenly barged in and interrupted them. Alice told Michael that the miraculous doctor had died in the massacre years ago, and she was the only surviving heir of the Doctor's Valley. This meant that Michael had no other option. If he wanted to survive, he had to use her blood. Alice agreed to go back home with him, and he promised not to restrict her freedom. They both found the lab's location at the same time. Alice wanted to go there herself to search for clues, but Michael was worried about her safety and decided to go with her. When they arrived, the lab personnel had already fled, but Alice found a surveillance USB drive on the ground. She accidentally triggered a laser gun, and Michael didn't hesitate to shield her with his body. He immediately collapsed. His brother Alan angrily blamed Alice for always causing trouble, which put his brother's life in danger. The doctor told them that although Michael had undergone surgery, he was still unconscious and not out of danger. Alice cried by his bedside, trying to wake him. The next day, he finally woke up. He didn't blame Alice, instead agreeing to help her get to the bottom of the truth. He held her as they slept, and when she woke up, she felt a bit shy, but he wouldn't let her go. A month later, Michael's condition flared up again. Dr. Eric told him that if he didn't let Alice exchange blood with him, he would have less than a month to live. She extended her arm, ready for him to draw her blood, but he refused. She bit her finger and forced him to drink her blood, but he vomited most of it out. To comfort her as she broke down, he kissed her. Alice searched through the medical manual to see if there was another way to save him. She found the last step that had the best effect: marriage and consummation. Alan discovered the true culprit behind Michael's condition worsening. The kitchen maid and the head chef had been poisoning his medicine. Alice restored the kitchen's surveillance footage, which showed Rose conspiring privately with the head chef. Rose admitted that it was Olivia who had suggested this to her. When Michael's men rushed to Olivia's house, they found that she had already escaped. Michael, knowing his time was running out, gave his brother instructions about his final wishes. He told Alan to continue investigating the lab's funding source and to protect Alice well. Hearing this, Alice couldn't help but cry. Alice proposed to Michael, but he rejected her. She was heartbroken, thinking he found her too monstrous. But he took her to the photos of his parents and said, "My mother died when she was 30, and my father committed suicide because he missed her too much. I inherited my mother's terminal illness, so I don't want you to become a widow at a young age." She told him, I suspect that the people from the lab are secretly observing me. They want to take my blood when it reaches its optimal effect. So, I need a fake wedding to lure them out. Michael agreed. He prepared many precious jewels and accompanied her to try on wedding dresses. When she descended the stairs in her wedding dress, he was completely mesmerized by her beauty. How he wished he had more time to be with her. Soon after, they held the wedding. Michael thought this wedding was a fake one arranged by Alice, but in reality, she was treating it as a real wedding, and she genuinely wanted to marry him. When he was about to place the wedding ring on her finger, his illness suddenly flared up again. Alice's assistant informed her that they had successfully decrypted the surveillance USB from the lab. In the footage, a man was speaking to a woman in a coffin. The medicine person will reach its full effect soon, and you'll be able to wake up. Alice realized that the man's voice sounded familiar. It was identical to Dr. Eric's voice. She then told Michael that the mastermind behind the lab was Eric. Michael was so shocked that he coughed up blood. Alice prepared to give Michael a blood transfusion. She instructed Michael's assistant to guard the door and not let Dr. Eric in. However, Eric barged in forcefully. He confessed that he had killed Alice's parents and brought her to the lab for experiments. He had prepared a sleeping gas, causing Alice to become weak and limp. Just as he was about to draw Alice's blood, she told him, "Dr. Eric, you've been tricked." Michael suddenly got up from the bed. It turned out that this was all part of a trap set by Michael and Alice to expose Eric's true identity. Michael tried to punch Eric, but then he noticed that the woman lying in the coffin was his deceased mother. Eric tore off his human skin mask, revealing his true identity. He was Michael's biological father, and he hadn't really died. His father intended to drain Alice's blood to resurrect his wife. Michael shouted, "My mother is dead. Alice's blood cannot bring the dead back to life." Just then, Olivia walked in. She had secretly harbored feelings for Michael's father, even though they were considered brother and sister by name. Michael's father didn't want to be with her, and this caused Olivia to snap. She confessed that she had already poisoned Michael. Furious, Michael's father pretended to embrace her, only to stab her in the stomach with a knife, killing her instantly. Michael told his father, "Alice and I haven't had sex, so her blood hasn't reached the highest level yet." Alice woke up and said to Michael's father, "You risked your son's life to save a dead person. If your wife finds out, she won't forgive you. She will hate you forever." His father completely broke down and crashed into his wife's coffin, dying instantly. Michael felt guilty for the wrongs his father had committed, but Alice took his hand and said, "Then spend the rest of your life making it up to me." He pushed her onto the bed, and she decided to have sex with him, using her blood to save him, promising to protect her body. Although he hesitated a bit, she turned over, pinned him beneath her, and kissed him.